I've been investigated many times.
Kate Gosselin is known for being fame-hungry.
Everybody has their own agenda. You know, my mom had her own agenda.
But not everyone realizes that even outside of TV, she's an even worse parent. And now her kids are revealing a terrifying situation that was once a secret that ended with the cops getting called. And you'll never believe everything she's done to her kids. After Kate's son Collin decided to speak out against his mom, pretty much everyone immediately turned on her. It became clear that Kate had not been a good mom to Collin at all, from physically and psychologically harming him to sending him away and cutting him off from the rest of the family. What she supposedly did to him was just horrible. She claimed that she did all this because Collin needed help, but is that really what happened? Even if she did only have his best interest at heart, that still doesn't mean she was a good mom, especially since it wasn't just Collin that she allegedly mistreated. All her kids seem to have suffered at different points because of Kate. For example, she allegedly forced them all to be on TV even though they didn't really want that. John talked about this in his 2020 interview with Dr. Oz. He claimed that his kids told him that they felt like they were forced to film because Kate wanted them to provide a certain kind of lifestyle for her. John said, "They don't want to film. They said they have to film. That's heartbreaking. Why do my kids need to provide for themselves? They're kids." That's honestly a good point. Filming kids for TV is always pretty controversial. A lot of people think that it's usually exploitative. That might not always be the case depending on your point of view, but it for sure seems to be the case here, because if the kids actually said that they didn't want to film, but they were still forced to do that, then that's pretty messed up, and it just makes it look like Kate cares more about money and fame than her own children. But there's more. Like I said, the way Kate treated Collin is just awful. A couple of years ago, the Daily Mail obtained a crazy report from 2018, which was submitted to the Court of Common Pleas of Berks County, Pennsylvania. This report included details about how Kate treated Collin, and what it said was shocking. Collin reportedly told his therapist that Kate would treat him differently than the other kids. She would allegedly do really harmful things. For example, she would zip tie him to a chair or force him to sleep in small enclosed spaces. She would also try to isolate him from his siblings, and she would often call him a bad child. Collin has since gone on record to say that he wasn't a perfect kid, but in his opinion, he wasn't a particularly bad kid either. He was just a normal kid who would sometimes misbehave, as would his siblings. But honestly, even if Collin was a really troubled kid, that would still not make Kate's treatment of him okay. I mean, he supposedly suffered from PTSD because of what she did to him. That's just horrible, and if it's all true, then that makes her a really terrible mom. Honestly, even if she treated all of her other kids well, the fact that she allegedly did this to Collin means that she's just not a good mom. No good parent would treat their child like this, no matter what problems they may or may not have. It's no wonder that Collin and Hannah seem much happier now that they're living with their dad. Actually, speaking of Hannah, in 2017, Kate did something so shocking to her daughter that the police had to intervene. Reportedly, John and Kate were at the dentist's office with Hannah. Like I said, these days, Hannah lives with John, and honestly, I'm not surprised, especially after hearing this story. Apparently, what happened is that Hannah said that she wanted to go home with John after her appointment. She didn't want to go to Kate's place. That seems like a pretty reasonable thing for a kid to request. She wanted to spend time with her dad, so what? That doesn't sound like the end of the world, except it supposedly made Kate really upset. She and John started arguing, and it got so bad that John had to call the police on Kate. Later, a spokesperson for the Wyoming Police Department spoke to ET, and they said that the two of them had been arguing over custody, and it really escalated. This all happened while they were still at the dentist's office. So not only did Kate blow up in a really crazy way, but she also did it in public just because her daughter wanted to go home with her dad. Can you even imagine how Hannah must have felt in that moment? She was only 13 years old at the time. It must have been absolutely terrifying for her. John's mom was supposedly there too. She saw the whole thing, and she later spoke to In Touch about it. She was quoted as saying, "I would never have believed that a scene could be so horrible until I witnessed the custody exchange myself. It's crazy that even an adult witnessing that argument was kind of scared by it. Again, I just can't help but feel really bad for Hannah." John's mom also said this about Kate. Kate thinks there is nothing wrong with her, so she would never subject herself to going to therapy, but she needs psychological help. That's a pretty crazy thing for someone to say, but honestly, if all these reports and allegations about Kate are true, then I would have to agree with John's mom. There's no shame in going to therapy, and I feel like it could potentially be good for Kate. It would probably also be really good for her kids. I'm sure that despite all these crazy incidents, she does genuinely care about them. It's possible that she just doesn't realize how hurtful her behavior actually is. She might even think that she's being completely reasonable and justified in her actions, but to me, it just seems like it. John's mom also told In Touch that Kate isolates the kids from John. John has said this himself as well. He hasn't spoken to some of his kids in years, which must be really hard for him, and it sounds like it's most likely all Kate's fault. John's mom described something crazy to In Touch. She said that Hannah told her that Kate would make all the kids chant that they would not go see John. That's right, she made them refer to their own dad as John. They had to promise that they wouldn't visit him, and on top of that, they also had to call him by his first name. I know that Kate has her own issues with her ex-husband, but it's pretty insane that she allegedly does things like this. Kids need their parents, and it's not healthy for them to be dragged into petty fights like this. John actually agrees with this. In 2022, he spoke to ET, and he said that Kate keeping him away from their kids was a poor parenting decision. I obviously agree with that, but there's more. John also told Entertainment Tonight that Kate would watch out for what she's saying because he has evidence of her behavior, and it could all come back to hurt her. Kate later fired back in her own statement. She said that John was violent, but she didn't really have any evidence for her claim, whereas John seems to have that, which I think speaks volumes. But what do you guys think about all this? Do you agree that Kate doesn't seem like a very good mom? Do you think she actually did all those things to her kids, or do you think some of these stories might not be true? What are your thoughts on her treatment of Collin? Let me know in the comments below.